So today I'll be restoring a Corgi Juniors Mercedes-Benz 280 SL. This car is part of Corgi's Whiz Wheels line of roughly 1/64 scale cars. I assume it came about to compete with Matchbox and Hot Wheels, but I'm not for sure. Here in the States, and more specifically where I live, I don't see too many of these out in the wild. In fact, this one was sent in by a subscriber Josh to be restored, and I would guess I own probably about 5 total in my collection. The car this casting is based on came out around 1969, so I'm assuming that the casting was made in the early 70s. It uses the standard two-post sandwich construction seen in Matchbox and Hot Wheels. It also employs wire axles, which further cement its production in the early 70s, as wire axles first came out in 1968 when Hot Wheels entered the marketplace. Upon taking the car apart, I was sort of taken back at how thin the metal was, especially in the base. I feel I could easily bend it if I wanted to. The metal in the body also seems a bit thinner than I'm used to, though nowhere near as noticeable as the base. Overall, the car is in reasonably good shape. The base is heavily oxidized and the body is missing paint on its corners, indicating normal play wear. It does have opening features with both doors, typical of the time period. The internal plastic and windshield are in good shape. I can see a small crack in the plastic windshield, but it's very small and hopefully won't stand out after the car is restored. To switch things up a bit, I thought I would start with the base and getting rid of all that oxidation. To do this, I'll electropolish the metal to remove it. If you've been watching my videos for very long, you may have seen me discussing the fact that on some occasions the electropolishing bath is copper plating the metal. The clamps that hold the parts are made of copper, and as time has gone by, they seem to be creating some sort of side reaction that is plating the metal. This is not a big deal at all because the next step is to zinc plate the base, and you can zinc plate over copper without any issue. But the fact that it's copper plating is very curious to me and something I would love to get working just on its own. To clean and copper plate all in one go would be very useful. However, I can't seem to get it to happen when I want it to, so I have to play with it a little bit more. If you have any ideas of how this might be working, please let me know below. I zinc plated the base for about 15 minutes at 0.3 volts and 100 milliamps. This was enough to completely cover the base and the copper with zinc. After the metal was cleaned up, it was time to start working on the wheels. Josh was adamant that he wanted to keep the original wheels, so I needed to clean them up as best I can. These wheels are missing their silver paint and are heavily worn from play, probably due to a cement driveway. To even out all the nicks in the tires, I'll first go over them with some 1500 grit sandpaper. This will also help remove some of the small hairs around the wheels. Next, I will polish them with Meguiar's Plastex polish and a buffing wheel. This will bring back some of the original shine and help hide some of the nicks and cuts. These wheels are pretty torn up, so I'm limited as to what I can actually do to them, as I can only remove material when really what they need is material added back. The wheels used on this car are what I like to call stamp wheels. I call them this because all the painted items on them are raised just like a rubber stamp. I'm not sure how exactly they painted the wheels back then, but I can use this stamp design to repaint the wheels using a paper plate and some rub and buff. What I'm making is a crude ink pad. The paper plate is thick enough to have a little bit of give and also has a thin coating on it that is good at holding the rub and buff. The rub and buff is a perfect substance for this as it has a very long dry time and can be applied very thinly to both the plate and the wheel. What I like to do is apply some of the rub and buff to the plate and then use my finger to create a very thin layer of it. I can then grab the base and firmly press the wheel into the rub and buff just like inking a stamp. This can then be repeated several times until the raised areas are completely covered. Alright, with the base done, I can start working on the body. The first thing I'll do is remove the paint with some paint stripper. With the paint removed, I can get a good idea of how much detail the car has and any major issues I need to work on. For this car, the body and metal are in really good shape. The small amount of oxidation can be removed with some steel wool. This will also scratch up the metal surface to help with good paint adhesion. Before I paint, it's best to prime the surface with some surface primer seen here. Once the surface primer is dry, I can get a really good idea of what the final look of the car will be. Any imperfections seen through the primer will also be seen through the paint. So the primer stage is one of the most important parts of getting things right, because what you see here is pretty much what you get later, especially using an airbrush. The first thing I'll do is apply some Vallejo Metal Color Chrome. This is an acrylic chrome paint that I can't say enough good things about. It's really simple to use and comes airbrush ready. I simply pour some into my airbrush and then make a couple passes over the car, Within a few seconds, the car begins to shine with a metallic luster. This metal layer will make up my undercoat and will be seen through the top coat. You can change the metal brightness by changing the primer color. If I had used a black primer, for example, the metal would have taken on a darker tone. Josh asked for the car to be painted in a more realistic color than one of the bright colors toy companies would use. These are luxury cars and typically didn't come in hot colors and instead use more muted tones. I decided to go with a Spectraflame root beer color. This is a color I hate on Hot Wheels, but typically looks great on cars such as this, as it's a very muted color. The muted color plus the metallic undercoat come together to give the car a realism that would be difficult to achieve with bright colors. Maybe that makes sense. You'll see the car later, all put together. Let me know if you think the car looks more or less like a toy with this color on it. The paint job was not all that bad, but I can improve some with a buffing wheel and some polishing compound. The trick to this is to stay away from the edges and just focus on the flat areas. Moving to the windshield, I can't see any major issues other than the small crack in the rear glass. I don't have a way of fixing cracks in clear plastic, or I should say I don't have a way to fix them and end up with an optically clear plastic in the end. The best that I can do is polish the plastic and hope the glare conceals the crack. I'm working on a way to make new plastic windshields on the fly. I still have a few bugs to work out in the process, but I hope to have a video out soon with a workable solution. With all the parts done, I can proceed to put the car back together. Here there's a little bit of difficulty as the interior plastic is used to hold the car doors in place, so getting all that together took a few minutes. The last thing I'll do is add in some tail lights. These were not painted in as far as I could tell on the original, but Josh felt that that would be okay. Alright, this one ended up being pretty easy, mostly because I could just prime and paint it without much sanding and body work. The wheels turned out reasonably okay given how worn out they were. There's still some nicks and cuts in the plastic here and there, but I couldn't really do much about it without sanding the wheels away. I understand why Josh wants to keep them. Changing them out would dramatically change the car, so that's reasonable. I do get asked a lot whether or not I can do particular cars for subscribers. And I know here lately I have been knocking out a bunch of them in different videos. But at the moment, I am going to not accept any new cars as I have way too many to be working on. So if you're interested in getting a car done, wait a couple months and hit me up then, and I should hopefully be good for it. Anyway, let me know what you think below, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.